A major earthquake in southern Japan has forced chipmaker TSMC and car giant Toyota to halt production. A major earthquake in southern Japan has forced chipmaker TSMC and car giant Toyota to halt production. The 7.1 magnitude tremor struck the Kumamoto prefecture on Tuesday afternoon at a shallow depth. The 7.1 magnitude tremor struck the Kumamoto prefecture on Tuesday afternoon at a shallow depth. Shaking reached the maximum rating on the Japanese intensity scale in Uki and nearby Hikawa. Shaking reached the maximum rating on the Japanese intensity scale in Uki and nearby Hikawa. TSMC immediately evacuated staff from its main Japanese plant in Kikuyo as a sensible safety precaution. TSMC immediately evacuated staff from its main Japanese plant in Kikuyo as a sensible safety precaution. The semiconductor fab, a specialized microchip factory, recorded intense shaking that triggered emergency evacuation protocols. The semiconductor fab, a specialized microchip factory, recorded intense shaking that triggered emergency evacuation protocols. Construction on the firm's second local facility was suspended briefly, though the site remained unharmed. Construction on the firm's second local facility was suspended briefly, though the site remained unharmed. Toyota also announced a temporary shutdown across 3 assembly plants in nearby Fukuoka. Toyota also announced a temporary shutdown across 3 assembly plants in nearby Fukuoka. These sites include the Miyata plant, which builds luxury Lexus vehicles for markets around the world. These sites include the Miyata plant, which builds luxury Lexus vehicles for markets around the world. The carmaker will pause work through Friday evening to inspect equipment and evaluate supplier logistics. The carmaker will pause work through Friday evening to inspect equipment and evaluate supplier logistics. Executives will decide on Friday whether assembly lines can safely resume early next week. Executives will decide on Friday whether assembly lines can safely resume early next week. Other technology giants in the region, including Sony and Renesas Electronics, paused their production lines too. Other technology giants in the region, including Sony and Renesas Electronics, paused their production lines too. Renesas discovered cracked walls, water leaks, and fallen ceiling panels across two of its facilities. Renesas discovered cracked walls, water leaks, and fallen ceiling panels across two of its facilities. Why does a single regional earthquake cause such deep concern for global supply chains? Why does a single regional earthquake cause such deep concern for global supply chains? Kumamoto has quietly built itself into the primary manufacturing heartland of Japan's semiconductor industry. Kumamoto has quietly built itself into the primary manufacturing heartland of Japan's semiconductor industry. When production freezes here, electronic component shortages can quickly cascade into global vehicle and device assembly. When production freezes here, electronic component shortages can quickly cascade into global vehicle and device assembly. The physical destruction across the prefecture extends far beyond these heavy industrial parks. The physical destruction across the prefecture extends far beyond these heavy industrial parks. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi confirmed that at least 13 people lost their lives in the disaster. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi confirmed that at least 13 people lost their lives in the disaster. Dozens of residents suffered injuries as homes collapsed and fires broke out across several towns. Dozens of residents suffered injuries as homes collapsed and fires broke out across several towns. At a paper mill in Yatsushiro, a heavy smokestack collapsed and trapped 11 workers underneath. At a paper mill in Yatsushiro, a heavy smokestack collapsed and trapped 11 workers underneath. Rescuers saved 2 people, but 5 workers died and search teams continue hunting for survivors. Rescuers saved 2 people, but 5 workers died and search teams continue hunting for survivors. A separate explosion at a shopping centre caused structural collapses, prompting urgent gas leak investigations. A separate explosion at a shopping centre caused structural collapses, prompting urgent gas leak investigations. Transport infrastructure across the island of Kyushu has suffered widespread disruption as well. Transport infrastructure across the island of Kyushu has suffered widespread disruption as well. Authorities closed 13 separate motorway sections while inspectors evaluate road cracks and landslide damage. Authorities closed 13 separate motorway sections while inspectors evaluate road cracks and landslide damage. High-speed bullet train services remain fully suspended along the main line connecting Hakata to Kagoshima. High-speed bullet train services remain fully suspended along the main line connecting Hakata to Kagoshima. Four regional operators also stopped train services across 6 local railway routes for safety checks. 4 regional operators also stopped train services across 6 local railway routes for safety checks. Fourteen commercial flights at the local airport were cancelled as travellers faced severe ground delays. 14 commercial flights at the local airport were cancelled as travellers faced severe ground delays. Utilities report that nearly 37,000 households lost power after the initial violent shock. Utilities report that nearly 37,000 households lost power after the initial violent shock. Water supplies remain cut off to roughly 84,000 homes across the affected prefectures. Water supplies remain cut off to roughly 84,000 homes across the affected prefectures. For now, companies face a delicate balance between worker safety and restoring global deliveries. For now, companies face a delicate balance between worker safety and restoring global deliveries. The coming days will show whether factories can restart without causing further supply shocks abroad. The coming days will show whether factories can restart without causing further supply shocks abroad. After that news from Japan, we turn to South Korea for our second story today. After that news from Japan, we turn to South Korea for our second story today. A quiet war for talent is breaking out between the nation's two largest chip makers. A quiet war for talent is breaking out between the nation's two largest chip makers. Engineers at Samsung are rushing to apply for jobs at their main rival, SK Hynix. Engineers at Samsung are rushing to apply for jobs at their main rival, SK Hynix. For decades, Samsung dominated the market, while SK Hynix operated in its shadow. For decades, Samsung dominated the market, while SK Hynix operated in its shadow. That old order changed quickly when artificial intelligence started to boom. That old order changed quickly when artificial intelligence started to boom. AI hardware requires specialized memory chips, known as HBM, to feed rapid data. AI hardware requires specialized memory chips, known as HBM, to feed rapid data. Years ago, Samsung cut its HBM team, assuming the market would remain small. Years ago, Samsung cut its HBM team, assuming the market would remain small. At the same time, SK Hynix chose to double down on the technology. At the same time, SK Hynix chose to double down on the technology. Today, SK Hynix leads the supply of these memory chips for major AI companies. Today, SK Hynix leads the supply of these memory chips for major AI companies. That leadership has brought record profits to SK Hynix. That leadership has brought record profits to SK Hynix. This year, the company is paying employees a cash bonus of $476,000. This year, the company is paying employees a cash bonus of $476,000. That enormous payout dwarfs what most Samsung engineers receive. That enormous payout dwarfs what most Samsung engineers receive. Samsung calculates annual bonuses differently, tying them to the earnings of each separate division. Samsung calculates annual bonuses differently, tying them to the earnings of each separate division. Workers in Samsung's memory unit expect around $400,000 this year. Workers in Samsung's memory unit expect around $400,000 this year. However, engineers in its logic chip division face a very different reality. However, engineers in its logic chip division face a very different reality. Because that unit operates at a loss, their bonus is roughly $135,000. Because that unit operates at a loss, their bonus is roughly $135,000. Many engineers feel that inequality is unfair after working long hours on difficult projects. Many engineers feel that inequality is unfair after working long hours on difficult projects. As a result, frustration across Samsung research teams has boiled over. As a result, frustration across Samsung research teams has boiled over. A recent internal survey revealed that 8 out of 10 logic chip engineers plan to leave. A recent internal survey revealed that 8 out of 10 logic chip engineers plan to leave. In some departments, almost entire teams of 30 people have submitted applications to SK Hynix. In some departments, almost entire teams of 30 people have submitted applications to SK Hynix. Even team leaders are quietly encouraging their staff to make the jump. Even team leaders are quietly encouraging their staff to make the jump. More than 200 union members have already made the switch in just 4 months. More than 200 union members have already made the switch in just 4 months. To stem the tide, Samsung agreed to pay out a portion of profits over 10 years. To stem the tide, Samsung agreed to pay out a portion of profits over 10 years. However, that deal relies mostly on company stock that takes 3 years to vest. However, that deal relies mostly on company stock that takes 3 years to vest. For many demoralized engineers, cash today from SK Hynix looks far more attractive. For many demoralized engineers, cash today from SK Hynix looks far more attractive. This talent drain leaves Samsung in a tough spot. This talent drain leaves Samsung in a tough spot. If it loses its best engineers, closing the gap in AI memory will take much longer. If it loses its best engineers, closing the gap in AI memory will take much longer. Yet matching rival bonuses across all divisions could create deeper financial stress. Yet matching rival bonuses across all divisions could create deeper financial stress. For now, Samsung faces the urgent challenge of keeping its engineers from walking out the door. For now, Samsung faces the urgent challenge of keeping its engineers from walking out the door. Moving to our third topic today, we leave microchip rivalries for military strategy in Eastern Europe. Moving to our third topic today, we leave microchip rivalries for military strategy in Eastern Europe. Ukrainian forces are changing how they use long-range drones against Russian oil refineries. Ukrainian forces are changing how they use long-range drones against Russian oil refineries. In earlier months, their main goal was simply setting large oil storage tanks on fire. In earlier months, their main goal was simply setting large oil storage tanks on fire. Those fiery explosions looked dramatic, but repair crews could often fix them quite quickly. Those fiery explosions looked dramatic, but repair crews could often fix them quite quickly. Now, Ukrainian drone units are taking a far more precise and technical approach. Now, Ukrainian drone units are taking a far more precise and technical approach. Instead of targeting big tanks, they aim for tiny, essential components deep inside the plants. Instead of targeting big tanks, they aim for tiny, essential components deep inside the plants. They target specialized pipes, electrical connections, and critical processing chimneys. They target specialized pipes, electrical connections, and critical processing chimneys. Why focus on these small targets? Why focus on these small targets? Taking out one custom piece of machinery can shut down an entire refinery for months. Taking out one custom piece of machinery can shut down an entire refinery for months. These complex components are very hard for Moscow to replace under current trade sanctions. These complex components are very hard for Moscow to replace under current trade sanctions. This strategy relies on deep technical knowledge shared by Ukrainian energy engineers. This strategy relies on deep technical knowledge shared by Ukrainian energy engineers. Both nations inherited energy systems built from identical designs during the Soviet era. Both nations inherited energy systems built from identical designs during the Soviet era. Ukrainian specialists know every industrial blueprint, layout, and operational weakness inside Russian factories. Ukrainian specialists know every industrial blueprint, layout, and operational weakness inside Russian factories. Before a flight, engineers brief drone operators on exact structural coordinates. Before a flight, engineers brief drone operators on exact structural coordinates. They show pilots precisely which metal joint or control box to hit for maximum impact. They show pilots precisely which metal joint or control box to hit for maximum impact. Ukrainian planners describe this method as systemic warfare. Ukrainian planners describe this method as systemic warfare. They view Russia's energy industry as one single interconnected web rather than separate buildings. They view Russia's energy industry as one single interconnected web rather than separate buildings. Breaking one key node creates a ripple effect across the entire fuel network. Breaking one key node creates a ripple effect across the entire fuel network. Ukrainian units are also returning to hit the same targets repeatedly. Ukrainian units are also returning to hit the same targets repeatedly. They strike a damaged component a second time, just as repairs near completion. They strike a damaged component a second time, just as repairs near completion. That tactic prevents refineries from resuming operations and forces Moscow to spend even more. That tactic prevents refineries from resuming operations and forces Moscow to spend even more. Ukrainian commanders say the ultimate goal of these strikes is twofold. Ukrainian commanders say the ultimate goal of these strikes is twofold. First, they want to cut off oil export revenues that fund the Russian war effort. First, they want to cut off oil export revenues that fund the Russian war effort. Second, they aim to disrupt fuel supplies, moving directly to Russian troops at the front. Second, they aim to disrupt fuel supplies, moving directly to Russian troops at the front. Kiev plans to expand this deep strike campaign even further across Russian territory in coming months. Kiev plans to expand this deep strike campaign even further across Russian territory in coming months. The real test now is whether Russian air defences can shield these scattered industrial nodes. The real test now is whether Russian air defences can shield these scattered industrial nodes. If critical spares run out, Moscow could face long-term fuel shortages right across its domestic market. If critical spares run out, Moscow could face long-term fuel shortages right across its domestic market. For our fourth topic today, security concerns move from oil refineries to military secrets inside NATO. For our fourth topic today, security concerns move from oil refineries to military secrets inside NATO. How does a young intern end up causing a major espionage panic at military headquarters? How does a young intern end up causing a major espionage panic at military headquarters? Belgian authorities recently arrested a Canadian citizen working as an intern inside NATO's main command centre. Belgian authorities recently arrested a Canadian citizen working as an intern inside NATO's main command centre. The facility in Mons, Belgium, plans and directs military operations for all 32 alliance members. The facility in Mons, Belgium, plans and directs military operations for all 32 alliance members. Security officers at the base noticed unusual behaviour and alerted Belgian intelligence services right away. Security officers at the base noticed unusual behaviour and alerted Belgian intelligence services right away. Police then searched her workplace and home before taking her into custody last Thursday. Police then searched her workplace and home before taking her into custody last Thursday. She faces serious charges of spying for an unnamed foreign power and joining a criminal organisation. She faces serious charges of spying for an unnamed foreign power and joining a criminal organisation. Official sources indicate the foreign country involved in the investigation is China. Official sources indicate the foreign country involved in the investigation is China. The Canadian government is cooperating fully with Belgian investigators to trace her recent communications. The Canadian government is cooperating fully with Belgian investigators to trace her recent communications. This case raises an urgent question about how hostile governments gather sensitive military intelligence. This case raises an urgent question about how hostile governments gather sensitive military intelligence. People often picture spies as senior officers with top clearance and access to nuclear codes. People often picture spies as senior officers with top clearance and access to nuclear codes. Yet, foreign intelligence agencies frequently target junior staff and temporary interns instead. Yet, foreign intelligence agencies frequently target junior staff and temporary interns instead. Interns often handle administrative files, meeting notes, and daily travel schedules. Interns often handle administrative files, meeting notes, and daily travel schedules. Over time, those ordinary documents can reveal broad patterns about troop movements and defense plans. Over time, those ordinary documents can reveal broad patterns about troop movements and defense plans. Why would Beijing focus so heavily on a European military command center? Why would Beijing focus so heavily on a European military command center? Geographically, China sits thousands of miles away from Western Europe and North America. Geographically, China sits thousands of miles away from Western Europe and North America. However, NATO has expanded its security partnerships into the Indo-Pacific region in recent years. However, NATO has expanded its security partnerships into the Indo-Pacific region in recent years. The alliance works closely with democratic partners like Japan, South Korea, and Australia. The alliance works closely with democratic partners like Japan, South Korea, and Australia. Beijing views those growing partnerships as an effort by Western nations to limit Chinese regional power. Beijing views those growing partnerships as an effort by Western nations to limit Chinese regional power. Chinese officials also criticize NATO for providing weapons and logistical help to Ukraine. Chinese officials also criticize NATO for providing weapons and logistical help to Ukraine. Gaining access to NATO's core command center gives Beijing direct visibility into Western defense strategy. Gaining access to NATO's core command center gives Beijing direct visibility into Western defense strategy. The big uncertainty now is how much confidential material was compromised during her internship. The big uncertainty now is how much confidential material was compromised during her internship. Officials are reviewing digital records to see if sensitive files left the secure building. Officials are reviewing digital records to see if sensitive files left the secure building. Western nations will likely tighten security vetting for temporary workers across all military facilities. Western nations will likely tighten security vetting for temporary workers across all military facilities. As espionage tactics evolve, screening temporary staff is becoming just as important as protecting physical borders. As espionage tactics evolve, screening temporary staff is becoming just as important as protecting physical borders. Finally, today, after that Belgian security story, we turn to big business in Washington. Finally, today, after that Belgian security story, we turn to big business in Washington. Shareholders in the giant chipmaker Intel are suing the US government. Shareholders in the giant chipmaker Intel are suing the US government. They are fighting an aggressive move by the administration to take company shares. They are fighting an aggressive move by the administration to take company shares. Under recent agreements, the state gives grant money in exchange for equity. Under recent agreements, the state gives grant money in exchange for equity. That means the government becomes a part owner in private commercial firms. That means the government becomes a part owner in private commercial firms. Originally, Intel was promised funding under a law boosting the chip industry. Originally, Intel was promised funding under a law boosting the chip industry. Now, officials are demanding actual stock before paying out those grants. Now, officials are demanding actual stock before paying out those grants. The administration has already struck about 30 similar deals across critical sectors. The administration has already struck about 30 similar deals across critical sectors. These trades cover microchip makers, power companies, and mineral technology startups. These trades cover microchip makers, power companies, and mineral technology startups. A new defense team handles these deals, managing up to $200 billion. A new defense team handles these deals, managing up to $200 billion. However, Intel shareholders argue this strategy sits on very shaky legal ground. However, Intel shareholders argue this strategy sits on very shaky legal ground. In past decades, Washington offered subsidies or loans without taking equity. In past decades, Washington offered subsidies or loans without taking equity. Investors say existing defense laws were never intended for state ownership. Investors say existing defense laws were never intended for state ownership. They worry that the process lacks transparency and risks favoring certain companies. They worry that the process lacks transparency and risks favoring certain companies. Without clear rules, taxpayer money could easily be squandered on bad deals. Without clear rules, taxpayer money could easily be squandered on bad deals. Yet there is a compelling counter-argument for state involvement. Yet there is a compelling counter-argument for state involvement. Leaving strategic industries entirely to private markets can create dangerous gaps. Leaving strategic industries entirely to private markets can create dangerous gaps. Years ago, America lost its lead in rare earth materials to foreign rivals. Years ago, America lost its lead in rare earth materials to foreign rivals. Microchips and rare earth elements are vital for modern defense systems. Microchips and rare earth elements are vital for modern defense systems. Some experts believe government stakes can secure these vital supply chains. Some experts believe government stakes can secure these vital supply chains. They argue that protecting national security is ultimately the state's duty. They argue that protecting national security is ultimately the state's duty. Now, the tough choices fall back on lawmakers in Congress. Now, the tough choices fall back on lawmakers in Congress. They must decide whether to reauthorize key defense laws by September 30th. They must decide whether to reauthorize key defense laws by September 30th. Congress could give explicit legal cover for taking equity in private companies. Congress could give explicit legal cover for taking equity in private companies. Lawmakers also plan to create federal stockpiles for critical raw minerals. Lawmakers also plan to create federal stockpiles for critical raw minerals. They need to draw firm guardrails to keep market practices fair. They need to draw firm guardrails to keep market practices fair. Without clear boundaries, public support for national industrial policy could vanish. Without clear boundaries, public support for national industrial policy could vanish. That brings us to the end of our 5 stories for today. That brings us to the end of our 5 stories for today. Thank you for sharing your breakfast time with me this morning. Thank you for sharing your breakfast time with me this morning. I hope your day goes well, and I shall see you tomorrow. I hope your day goes well, and I shall see you tomorrow.